That's right. The one, the only, the great Baldy, Brian Baldinger. What do you say, brother?
What's up, cuz? How we doing today, man?
Missed you, buddy.
Hey,
How you
nobody has it
feeling?
better than us, cuz. Nobody has it better than us.
How's the wing?
I got to go back in and get some stitches. Yeah, got to get a little minor repair. But I'm doing okay, man. I'm doing
You
all right.
hanging? You look good. That's all that matters. This portion of the show brought to you by TrueMark Financial Credit Union. Check out TrueMark.com/PHLY or stop at your local branch to learn more about the credit union difference at TrueMark Financial today. All right. So a couple things. Before we get into the football piece of it, we were having a debate here. And nobody, like when it comes to advice, I always go to you about everything. All right. So I was telling the guys that my Anthony's 14 years old. Yeah. He's about to go into high school, right? So he's lifting, he's doing strength, he's doing speed and agility, right? So yesterday or Saturday, I was about to take Massimo to baseball, and I said, dude, I need you to run your sprints, right? So I got the cones, and I put the cones up in the yard, and I go, I want 25 sprints. Right, I went one, and I did 40, and then I did 100. Right, like so, VG says to me, "What are you, ridiculous?" I said, "No." He said he's got to do this. He's got to hit camp. It's his first camp, and I said he's got to do this every day. Right. Now, what do you think? They sound being too hard.
No, I mean, look. First of all, conditioning is a part to any sport. I mean, you're going to watch the NBA finals starting this week. You watch these guys go up and down the court. Conditioning is important. I'll be at OTAs tomorrow. Like, if you can't be in top condition, you can't be a top competitor. And the one thing about sprinting is the only way to get faster is to work at getting faster. The only way to speed your system up. There's only two ways to actually get faster. One is to increase your stride length or increase the frequency of your stride. And you could do both when you sprint. And so I'm a big believer in sprinting. Even at, ninth grade, I saw, Ant on the squat rack. Like, this is the time when kids, like, everybody grows differently. I grew late. I matured late. I didn't really start growing until I finished high school. But everybody does it differently. But when you get to ninth grade, it's time to start hitting it, because if you want to start looking at the colleges and recruiting and all that, they start looking at these kids now because they want to project what they're going to look like when they get to college. So I'm in favor of what you're making them do right now.
Thank you, Baldy, VG. You're going to be Marinovich. I'm like, no. And the whole point is you got to do something every day, right? Like, it's 45 minutes. It's not a lot.
Here's the thing, cuz. Here's the thing. Kids, either you're naturally competitive and you compete in everything you do, and that's kind of like innate. And then there's most kids need to be pushed, whether it's peer pressure or their father or a coach. But most kids, you have to, just the way you have to practice to get better at anything, I believe in being competitive every day, competing every day. Just go watch David Beckham and his dad as he tried to get to Man United when he was a kid, and how all those things he did in his backyard with his dad paid off, and he ended up becoming one of the greatest soccer players of all time. I believe kids have to compete every day because it makes them more competitive.
Yes, thank you. So we settled that, Greg. Violations, Greg. Let me ask you about when it comes to travel, right? And when it comes to the whole thing, the whole world, it feels like, is on a plane now, right? The idea of and I was having this conversation about to a young college person and how traveling opens up the world, and it's the greatest education when you're exposed to other cultures. What do you think of that?
I mean, you can only learn so much in a classroom. you got to go out and experience it. And everybody experiences travel differently. And so whether it's language, whether it's culture, whether it's food, whether it's, work ethic, whatever it is, every culture is different. And you got to see it through your own eyes to learn it. And so, I've lived in 6 different countries. I lived in Germany. I lived in Spain. I lived in England. I lived in Amsterdam. I lived in all these different countries. And in each place I lived, I felt like I learned a little bit different about the world, the culture, the melting pot, how people get along and how they don't get along, and issues in certain places. So I'm a huge believer in traveling to fortify your education.
Well, and the other aspect of it too is it gives you a different perspective, right? Like even someone like you, and I think this helped you. The fact that you were a military brat and you moved around, you saw Minnesota, you saw New York, you saw Philadelphia, you saw these different parts of our country, start in our country and then, go abroad, but you'll see the different ways in different parts of our country. And I think that alone helps you.
No, there's no question. There's no question. Nobody wants to pack up, in 5th grade and move from New Jersey to Minnesota, and leave your friends behind, but you end up making new friends, and then you leave Minnesota and you move to New York and you got to pack up and do it all over again. But you learn how to make friends. You learn how to hang on to the friends that you really valued. I'm still friends with a couple guys that I grew up in Cherry Hill, New Jersey when I was 8, 9, 10 years old. I still see them around and we get together and not necessarily talk about those days, but we're just still friends. We have a common bond. And so I think those things are all valuable to just the maturity and the growth of any individual.
Baldy on life. It's the best. All right, to football we go. And the big story, Justin Jefferson, a whopping $140 million contract, $110 million guaranteed, the highest non-quarterback in the history of the league. Will Jamar Chase beat it?
Probably. He'll probably beat it. He's been in the league a year longer, and so, or maybe a year before. But yeah, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, they've gone to a Super Bowl already. Justin Jefferson hasn't done anything like that. Jamar Chase has a quarterback Jamar Chase came out last year when Joe was injured, and he said, "I'm open. I'm always bleeping open." And in some ways, he's always open. He's just that strong and that talented. So he probably will. The wide receiver market has exploded. If you notice, none of these teams with these receivers have won anything, to be honest with you. They're just, expensive, fun pieces to watch on Sunday. But Kansas City has proven that you don't need that piece and to pay that piece in order to win Super Bowls. The Eagles proved that because when they won the Super Bowl in 2017, they didn't have a 1,000-yard rusher. They didn't have a 1,000-yard receiver. They didn't have a player with 10 sacks. But they were a great team. And they won with the backup quarterback. So it's still all about team and how you play as a team and how you accent your strengths on a team. But I'm happy for Justin. I always said this about Justin Jefferson, even when he was at LSU, and even when the Eagles passed on him and passed him up to go get that Jalen Reagor guy. I said, the thing about Justin Jefferson is this. That guy has a plan to get open, and he has a plan after the catch. And he's different like that. And so he's an exciting, very good player. But I don't know that you want, they got Jordan Addison there now. They got TJ Hawkinson. Okay, you're paying all these guys. All right, who's going to be the quarterback? Who's going to feed him now? That's going to be the next question for him.
It's so interesting. You bring up none of these teams with a receiver's ever won anything, and it's been. How do you take that into account when you're building? You're an architect of a team, and you got a receiver like that. You have a weapon like that. It's hard not to embrace it, right? Like when the Patriots had Randy Moss, they were unstoppable up until the end, right? When they get beat. Look what T.O. did for the Eagles. They were, knocking at the door. They get TO. They're in the Super Bowl. And to no fault of his own, he was the best player on that field on one leg in Jacksonville.
Yep.
How do you balance it?
Well, you need receivers, obviously. You can't play without them. I think a team to watch this year is just watch the Los Angeles Chargers. Watch the Chargers. I mean, they just unloaded Michael Williams and Keenan Allen. I mean, guys that have had elite years in this business. Keenan Allen's coming off his best year ever. But they're not there right now. They're not paying him. Let's just see what the Chargers do. And they've got an elite quarterback in Justin Herbert. But I would say that Drew Brees won a Super Bowl without an elite receiver. Devery Henderson, Marcus Colston. You go through the guys. They had Jeremy Shockey there when they won. They didn't have any elite receivers. They won a Super Bowl. They had the most accurate quarterback of all time. Kurt Warner won a Super Bowl with great receivers, no question about it. In a Hall of Fame, at least one Hall of Fame receiver, maybe Torrey Holt gets it, maybe he's going to get two. You need receivers. Like Miami just signed Jalen Waddle, which is a good signing. He's a good player. Tyreek Hill's the most targeted receiver in the league the last 2 years. Elite player. Elite players get hurt, like T.O. got hurt. They haven't done anything. They haven't won in the postseason 2 years in a row. So you could pay. They're paying two guys to be number one wide receivers. I think it's hard. And the Eagles are paying two guys to be number one receivers, in AJ and Devontae. It's good to have them on your roster. You're paying them a lot of money. Let's see how they work. Let's see how they work together. And let's see what they accomplish and what they win. Because it's not my highest priority if I'm building a team.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we talked about Randy Moss, but for the lion's share of all the Super Bowls they won, Patriots never had the elite receiver. That was always the argument, right? They never had the elite receiver. And you go through these teams, and Mahomes will show it. Like you mentioned Kansas City, right? They win on defense and Mahomes make plays. It's so interesting. And that Eagle team that wins, you're right. I mean, it belies all the sexiness. They were the most unsexy team ever to win a Super Bowl. You can make that argument.
Yeah, I mean, you can. But they were built really strong in the trenches. I mean, they played without Jason Peters. Big V played left tackle. They had depth. They had depth on the defensive line. They had depth on the offensive line. And they overcame the injuries. And they got a quarterback that got hot at the right time. But Carson had a great start to that year. I think they started 10-1. So, look, just watch the Dolphins this year. Okay, they've got all these speed at running back and at receiver. The offensive line looks very questionable to me. They don't look like they have a center. The left tackle's gotten hurt every year. We'll see if Tua could play 18 games like he did last year. I don't know. He's never done it before. Maybe. I hope he does. It's good for the league. The Chargers said, we'll let Keenan Allen and Michael Williams, go, but we'll go get Joe Alt. We'll go build our offensive line. We'll keep Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. We'll keep our defensive line strong. There's just different ways to do this. San Francisco went and got within 5 yards of winning a Super Bowl against Baltimore, and they didn't have any elite receivers. They ran the hell out of the football that year, and they played great defense.
Yeah, it's interesting. You just know. One of the things that you just know is that Harbaugh will turn that thing around. You just know it. I'm sitting here listening to you talking about what he's doing, and we've said this before. They'll be in the Super Bowl in 2 to 3 years.
Well, here's the thing, cuz we're talking about your son, motivation, and you got to get pushed every day. NFL players have to get motivated, and they have to get pushed. They just do. And certain coaches, Bill Parcells, certain guys, Bill Belichick, certain guys just know how to push buttons. That's what they do. They push buttons every day. And Harbaugh motivates you every day. And some of it is fun, and some of it is serious, and some of it is that's how he's wired. And so he's won everywhere he's ever gone. San Diego, University of San Diego, Stanford, San Francisco, Michigan, back to the NFL. We know he's going to win. But part of the reason why he's going to win is he's going to motivate guys to a better team individually. He's going to challenge them. And he knows how to build a team. So there's just certain things that certain people that are leaders, born leaders, know how to do. It could be sports, it could be business, it could be academia, it could be anything. They just know how to lead. And that's what Jim Harbaugh is.
Yeah, that's so well put. It's so well put. All right, I do want to have some fun in that we talk about Justin Jefferson being top five, getting the contract today. I want Baldy's top 5 all-time receivers. Like your receivers that when you look at skill, catching the ball, route running, unstoppable, like just the greatest receivers. And, I look at today and over the last 10 years, and especially today, we've just seen an advent of just incredible receiver play, right? Like nowadays, there's 10, 12 guys drafted every year that are pronounced, that are really good. So I'm curious to see who your top 5, and, is Jerry Rice, because he's always, the GOAT when it comes to receivers, but is that fair? Is that a slight to today's receiver?
No, it's not a slight. He was the perfect guy in the West Coast system. He got the right amount of targets, the right amount of plays, a proven Hall of Fame coach coaching a system that spread like wildfire around the league. No, Jerry Rice is still there. Randy Moss is there. Sterling Sharp, for my money, he played 6 years. I've never seen a receiver built like Sterling Sharp, as strong as Sterling Sharp, as dominant as Sterling Sharp, period. Now, you could say he didn't have the longevity. He broke his neck. Had his neck fused, could have come back and played, said, I'm not risking it. Sterling Sharp is a top 5 wide receiver of all time.
Wow.
Look, I'll put Drew Pearson in that category. Drew Pearson won Super Bowls with Dallas Cowboys, toughest guy in a huddle that I've ever played with, fearless across the middle, never got hurt, played every game. Drew Pearson was a phenomenal football player. As tough as they come. Loved to practice, loved the game. I'm partial because I played with him for 6 years, and I became a really good friend of his. But I'll put him in there. And I guess you got to take a guy from today's modern era. Like it would be hard to go against Tyreek Hill right now. Just like I just did this breakdown on him this weekend, cuz I watched every catch of his this past year. He had 119 catches on 170 targets for almost 1,800 yards. And he was, limping basically the last 4 games of the season. Like he could have, if he's not limping, he gets 2,000 yards. Nobody could cover him. He's, it's 34 below in Kansas City in a playoff game. It's Arctic frigid conditions, and he's going 50 yards for a touchdown. And, guys are tripping over themselves trying to get him out of the end zone. I mean, Tyreek Hill is, I think he's like, I love Jamar. I love Justin. I love AJ. I love Brandon Ayuk. I love a lot of guys in this league, but I don't think anybody is in the category of Tyreek Hill right now.
Well, and I was going to ask you about that because he just dominates a game. Like, what is interesting is Deshaun Jackson was an incredible weapon, right? Like the speed that he had, he'd run through a cover 2. He forced defensive coordinators to roll coverage. Like he just made space on the field, right? Mm-hmm. And Tyreek Hill is better, right? And even more dominant than Deshaun was. And that kind of thing we've never really seen, right? I mean, is he the greatest long ball speed threat in the history of the sport?
Randy Moss was the most talented receiver of all time.
He was also bigger, right? And
just reach, leaping ability, all that. Randy goes to New England after sitting on the bench basically with the Raiders for 2 years, catches 23 touchdown passes. Talent-wise, he came in 1998. I mean, there's John Madden on Thanksgiving gushing over Randy Moss. Like nobody will ever forget his debut, what he did as soon as he came. He dominated this league the way we see Tyreek do it now, but he did it day one in Minnesota. So I mean, Randy's the most talented I've ever seen. Jerry Rice had longevity and did it year in, year out. But what Tyreek is doing right now is, I mean, he's just going to. Now, I know it's a 17-game schedule, so it's a little bit longer. He's getting more catches, but we might not see another guy like Tyreek.
And the other aspect is, and this is the argument I'll make, that maybe Chase and or Jefferson belong on the list, in that if today is the era of passing, right, then the receiver has to have more of an impact on an all-time list, just because everybody's trying to defend you, right? Like everybody's, there's so much back, a lot of those guys played in the era of the running back, right? Which made the receiver's job a lot easier, although they had to be great blockers. But you look at today, it takes a lot for a receiver to stand out. And you look at Jefferson, and he's every bit of Jerry Rice. Like, you know what? He'll take it to the house. He'll beat you on an inside slant. I mean, he'll do the same thing.
Yeah, he's we put him anywhere, just like CD Lamb. I mean, CD had an incredible season last year. I know he's looking to get paid. He's looking at what Justin Jefferson just got. Jerry Jones didn't get out of bed this morning after he saw that contract, because it's going to be hard to match it. It's going to be hard. But, I mean, CD Lamb last year was the Eagles nobody could stop him. He's a phenomenal, and he's like Drew Pearson. He's just as tough as they come. I mean, over the middle, he'll take the hits. It doesn't matter. Like, that guy is just resilient as hell. But look, I mean, this is fun. It's fun, and we're in the fantasy football league business. Everybody's tracking their guys. Everybody has this chance now. But, and then there's so many different ways to get guys the ball, and so whether it's fly sweeps, that counts as a catch. You do this to a guy coming underneath, and that's a catch. So, we got to be a little bit careful about it. Tyreek runs this route that nobody else in the league runs. He runs it from the tight slot, and he just runs. He just, he goes in motion, and ball snapped, and he's gone. And you don't know what he's going to do. He could run a streak. He could run a curl. He could run a sail route. He could run any route off it. I'm not sure how Tua decides where he's going with it. Maybe it's just based on defense, but it's an unstoppable route, and only Tyreek does it. Yeah,
no, it's fantastic. Hey, at some point, I had this whole conversation about flag football and its impact on real football. So at some point, I need to get to your brain about this. But I know you got a busy week ahead. You're going to be going to OTAs. I'm really looking forward to it. What are you looking forward to watching? You got Eagles, you got Jets. What are you looking forward to watching? Let's go with the Eagles.
Well, I mean, they just drafted Quinion Mitchell and DeJean Cooper. So, I want to see those corners. I want to see them in one-on-ones, line up. I mean, just be able to stay with the elite receivers that the Eagles have. I'm looking at that, number one. I'm looking at, you can't really do a lot. So to say, Jordan Davis says he's in great shape and all that. Let's just see what that great shape looks like. Does he sprint drill to drill, play to play? Because it's a factor. It's a factor. He gets worn down quickly. I want to see what Vic Fangio is shouting about. I mean, it used to be back in the day when Jim Johnson was here. Like, you knew what was going on defensively by hearing Jim's voice. Like, it just cut through everything else. Like, whether it was good or bad. And generally it was bad. Whether it was alignment, whether it was technique, whether it was a fundamental or whatever, you could hear Jim Johnson. You knew what was being emphasized. You could do. Vic's not as animated as that, but this is a new way of doing things. And so I'm curious to see, just defensively, because it was a mess last year. I'm curious to see Vic Fangio's impact, just even in an OTA. And then just I want to watch, like, the Eagles have a new quick game. They haven't had it before. They've never had it, and so they haven't had it since Chip Kelly came here. So I'm interested to see Kellen Moore in the quick game, because the quick game can help you get out of blitz situations. They were terrible against the blitz last year. Let's see a little bit of that on display.
Don't forget, it's the Meat Locker, right? And we're brought to you by Butcher Box. We got to love the Butcher Box. High quality meat and seafood.
I just cooked from the Butcher Box. I just cooked a 6-pound pork buttocks yesterday. I'm telling you, The pork fell off 5 hours. 5 hours in the oven. That pork fell off the bone. Best meat I've had in a long, long time.
How'd you do it? Would you marinate it?
No, I coated it in oil. I salt, pepper, threw a little onion powder on it, and I put it on 300 degrees for 5 hours.
Oh my God!
Covered it up after about 3 hours with some tin foil. I'm telling you, that thing was as juicy and fresh and tasty as any meat you're going to have.
Oh, see that, and that's Butcher Box, man. Yeah. You got the pork butt from the Butcher Box, and of course all the steaks, because I love the steak, and we like our tomahawks. All the best meat and seafood you want, Butcher Box. Trust me, and Butcher Box right now, an amazing offer. New users get free meat plus $20 off your first box. Join today. Use the link butcherbox.com/PHLY. Use that code PHLY. You get this exclusive offer, Butcher Box. My brother, so great seeing you, man. Missed you last week.
Yep. All right. Luke, I'll talk to you later in the week when I get through some of these OTAs.
Love it. Baldy,
see you, buddy.
The great Baldy. There he is.
We all silly like the mayor.